Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Fabricated Azadari Rituals. In our previous episode, we reached an important Hadith-based conclusion. By opening the canonical collections, we established that we are living in the era of the occultation, the era of maximum danger, and we proved that the absolute divine mandate of taqiyya demands the strict concealment of our religion from a hostile public, and that abandoning this shield makes one a partner in the destruction of the Shia. This brings us to the ultimate inescapable question. If the infallible Imams mandated absolute political passivity and the strict hiding of our core beliefs, then how exactly did they command us to mourn Imam Hussain? Today we bypass the loud emotional rhetoric of the modern public pulpit. We will open the foundational books to prove that the Imams did not leave instructions for street rallies and public protests or massive, broadcasted events. Instead, they left a profound, highly protective, and a strict domestic blueprint. True Azadari is an internal, is a private fire, not a public spectacle. Furthermore, in this episode, we will address a very simple, undeniable, logical point. If the authentic texts guarantee a believer the astronomical reward of 1 million Hajj just by mourning in the absolute privacy of their own home, then what is the theological need to go out and mourn in the public street or any center outside the house? To understand the true Sunnah of mourning, we must look directly at how the Imams commanded us. Let's start with the day of Ashura. The 10th of Muharram, the day of Ashura, is not just another day on the calendar. It is the absolute zenith of our tragedy. It is the pinnacle, the apex, and the ultimate climax of grief. If the infallible Imam commanded us to observe strict absolute privacy on the day of Ashura, the very day the mourning requires maximum intensity, then taking our grief into the streets on any other day of the year is a direct violation of the law. So what is the command for the climax of grief for the day of Ashura? Let's open an important hadith from Wasa'il al-Shia, volume 8, where Imam Jafar as-Sadiq instructs his close companion Abdullah bin Sinan on the optimal physical and spiritual state for the day of Ashura. Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salam said, the best thing to do on this day, meaning the day of Ashura, is to take clean clothes, wear them, and be in a state of mourning. I asked, what is this state of mourning? He said, loosen your buttons and uncover your forearms, like those on whom have befallen great calamities. Then go out to a desolate land, or a place where no one can see you, or proceed to an empty house of yours, or in seclusion, from when the day rises, and pray 4 rakats, perfecting its ruku, its sujood, and its humility, and giving salam between every 2 rakats. And then the Imam provides details on how this salat is to be prayed. The hadith continues, then give the salam and turn your face towards the grave of al-Hussain, peace be upon him, and his resting place. Imagine for yourself his place of martyrdom, and those who were with him from his family and children send peace upon him, pray, curse his killer, and disassociate from their actions. Allah will raise your ranks in paradise for that and erase your misdeeds. Then he mentioned a supplication to be recited after that. Then said, "This, O Ibn Sinan, is better than so many voluntary Hajj pilgrimages and so many voluntary Umrahs in which you spend your wealth, exert your body, and leave your family and children." The Imam does not tell him to put on a uniform and join a crowd. He does not tell him to organize a massive procession to show the world his love. He commands him to isolate himself completely. The Imam instructs him to go to a desolate land or to an empty place where no one can see you. And let the weight of that infallible instruction sink in. Imam says where no one can see you. Why did the Imam demand total geographic and social isolation on the day of greatest grief? Because isolation completely removes the need for social approval. It ensures you aren't performing for a crowd or a camera. When you are weeping in an empty room or a desolate place, no one can record you. Your grief and tears are stripped of all theatrical performance and are shed exclusively under the gaze of Allah. Now, I'm not saying that the millions of Shias mourning in the streets are insincere. Many possess a deep, genuine, burning love for Imam Hussain in their hearts. But what I'm saying is that the public arena offers absolutely zero spiritual advantage. We do not mourn to seek the validation of the masses or to prove our devotion to onlookers. We mourn strictly out of the love for the Imam and to seek proximity to Allah. And if that is our true goal, an audience provides no benefit whatsoever. It only introduces the dangerous spiritual liability of performing for the creation rather than the creator. Furthermore, the Imam instructed Abdullah ibn Sinan to enter a state of raw, unrefined distress, loosening his garments and uncovering his forearms in the chaotic manner of someone whose world has just ended. And this state of true, overwhelming devastation cannot be choreographed. Now contrast the infallible instruction that the Imam gives Abdullah ibn Sinan. Compare the instruction of solitary, raw grief with the modern rationalist standardization of Azadari today. What do we see? We see highly coordinated public parades, matching black uniforms, synchronized chanting, and camera crews broadcasting the event to the entire world. It is the absolute antithesis of the Imam's command to go where no one can see you. If a Shia cannot reach a desolate place, a desolate desert, the infallible mandate shifts immediately to the locked doors of the home. Yet to justify their massive public spectacles, the rationalist establishment frequently relies on a specific linguistic distortion regarding this domestic mourning. Modern speakers will stand on the pulpit and confidently tell the masses that the Imams commanded us to make the grief of Imam Hussain Zaahir, meaning manifest and evident and visible to the public, to the world. They use this Arabic word to justify taking the mourning into the streets, claiming that if the grief must be Zaahir, it must be made public. But when we trace this argument back to the exact primary texts, we uncover a massive deception. The primary foundational text that they are misusing is found in Kamil al-Ziyarat, chapter 71. In this famous tradition, Al-Qama asks Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam exactly what a Shia should do on the day of Ashura if they are living in faraway cities and cannot physically travel to Karbala. Listen carefully to the precise translation of the Imam's response and notice the strict geographic boundaries the Infallible Imam places around this concept of making the grief Zaahir. When that day comes, let him go out to the desert or climb a high roof in his house and point to Imam Hussain with salutations and exert in cursing his killer and pray 2 units of prayer after it. Then let him mourn al-Hussain and weep for him and command whoever is in his house to weep for him and establish the mourning in his house by making the grief manifest over him, over the people of the house. And let them meet one another with weeping in the houses and let them console each other for the tragedy of al-Hussain. The text then goes on to offer a severe warning prohibiting public movement. And if you are able to not go out that day for any need, then do so. For it is a day of misfortune in which no need is fulfilled. So whoever does that, the reward of 1 million Hajj, 1 million Umrah, and 1 million military expeditions, jihad, all with the Messenger of Allah will be written for him. To further cement this reality, we look at how this exact command is codified in Wasa'il al-Shia, volume 14, Hadith 1970. Imam Baqir alayhi salam issues the same directive, but the text includes a terrifying caveat regarding taqiyya. The Imam says, then let him lament Hussain and weep for him, and order those in his house who he does not fear to weep for him, and establish mourning in his house by showing grief for him, bi-izhari al-jaza, and let them console each other for their affliction regarding Hussain. Yes, the Imam used the concept of making the grief manifest and utilizing the exact Arabic word bi-izhari. But look at the ironclad physical limitations that the Imam places around it. Where does the Imam explicitly command you to make it manifest? In the house. Where should the mourners meet one another? In the house. To whom does he say that you should command to weep? Those in his house who he does not fear. The Imam is so uncompromisingly strict about concealment that he even commands you to hide your mourning from unsafe people inside your own home. There is zero command to take this manifestation outside the walls of your private property. In fact, the Imam explicitly prohibits it, commanding the Shia that if you are able to not go out that day for any need, then do so. By stripping the word Zaahir from its domestic context and dragging this internal manifestation into the hostile public street, the rationalist establishment has committed a direct violation of the text. The primary, divinely mandated location for Azadari is the absolute, heavily guarded sanctuary of the family, of your home. When presented with these commands for isolation, the modern rationalist will often argue that while private mourning is good, congregational public mourning is vastly superior and necessary to rescue the religion. They view the street procession as a massive, multiplied religious achievement. But this exposes a massive flaw in their logic. In the theology of the al-Bayt, when an act of worship is meant to be public and social, the Imams explicitly attach a mathematical multiplier to it, where the rewards are multiplied. Take the daily prayers, for example. The Hadith corpus is full of traditions stating that congregational prayer multiplies the reward by 25 or 27 times compared to praying alone at home. But search the entire classical corpus of Shia Hadith. Where is the Hadith that states beating your chest in a synchronized circle of 1,000 people yields a higher reward than weeping alone in your room? Where is the congregational multiplier for Azadari? It does not exist. There is absolutely no extra reward offered by the Imams for public broadcasted mourning. Return to the precise hadith of Kamil al-Ziyarat we just read. What does Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam promise the believer who avoids the public, establishes Azadari in his house, and mourns privately with their family? He explicitly guarantees that this private, hidden believer will receive the reward of 1 million Hajj, 1 million Umrah, and 1 million military expeditions alongside the Messenger of Allah. All of this astronomical reward is granted without ever stepping foot outside the front door. And if you can earn this absolute maximum reward in the privacy of your home, then why are you marching on the street? The rationalist will respond with fear. Oh, if we do not march, if we do not publicly display our grief, the mourning of Imam Hussain will die out, or we have to protest to save Azadari. Think about the sheer arrogance of this argument. If Azadari could only be rescued by marching in the streets, why didn't the Imams organize street marches? How did the mourning of Karbala survive the darkest and the most brutal periods of the Umayyad and the Abbasid dynasties, when holding a public procession meant immediate execution? It survived precisely because it was hidden. It survived exactly because the Imams engineered a brilliant, impenetrable domestic blueprint. The Azadari of the classical Shia was an internal private fire that the state could not see, could not monitor, and therefore could not extinguish. To claim that we must march to save the religion is to claim that we know better than the infallible Imams on how to preserve their own legacy. But what about when the Imams themselves hosted mourning gatherings? Did they practice what they preached? Absolutely. When prominent poets were invited to recite the heart-rending elegies of Ashura, the Imams did not build a public place. They did not invite the public of Medina to witness the event. The recitation was done in the privacy of the Imam's house. We find the exact architectural setup of these gatherings recorded clearly in the texts. Let's open Wasa'il al-Shia volume 14, Hadith 19887. In this hadith, the poet Abu Harun al-Makhfuf reports that Imam Jafar as-Sadiq called upon him privately to recite poetry about Imam Hussain. And when Abu Harun began to recite, the Imam commanded him to recite with raw, deep emotion. And as the poet recited and the Imam wept, Abu Harun noted a critical architectural detail about the room. He said, "And I heard crying from behind the curtain." This sitar or curtain was not just a piece of fabric used to divide a room. It was a multi-layered tactical shield that protected the entire gathering. It also proves that this whole event happened inside the privacy of the Imam's house. The curtain served the immediate requirement of gender segregation, physically shielding the women of the Prophet's household from the gaze of non-mahram poets, but its broader purpose was deeply rooted in the survival of the Shia. It was an acoustic and a visual shield of taqiyya. It muffled the sound of the wailing inside the innermost chambers of the house, ensuring that the grief did not leak out or bleed out into the public street and maybe invite a raid by the state spies. By keeping the primary mourners hidden behind a screen in a private home, the Imams ensured that the grief was heavily insulated from the outside world. It guaranteed that every tear shed was exclusively for the al-Bayt, entirely untainted by a public audience or the dangerous exposure of a public gathering. When faced with the overwhelming and undeniable weight of these traditions, demanding absolute privacy, the rationalist establishment will inevitably attempt to defend their public spectacles using usually two decontextualized historical arguments, and let us systematically dismantle each one of them. Number one, the will of Imam al-Baqir in Mina. The rationalist pulpits constantly reference the will of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, who commanded his son to allocate a portion of his estate to hire professional mourners, nawahat, to mourn for him in Mina during the Hajj season for 10 consecutive years. They argue that Mina is the most public place on earth, and if mourning must be private, then why did the Imam do this? The rationalists attempt to use this to justify a massive Ashura street procession is a textbook example of false analogy. The Imam left a specific personal will to allocate a portion of his own estate to hire mourners for his own death. He did not issue a universal religious decree for the Shia to hire mourners for Imam Hussain every Muharram. Furthermore, you must understand the political reality of that era. During the time of Imam Baqir alayhi salam, the Umayyad state had an absolute monopoly on information, and they strictly censored any mention of the Ahlul Bayt's virtues. A professional female mourner in classical Arabia was an expert elegist and poet, and by utilizing his own personal wealth to hire these nawahat to recite his elegies, specifically in Mina during Hajj, the Imam executed a brilliant one-time political strategy to break an information blackout regarding his own legacy. And it was a calculated maneuver to bypass Umayyad censorship at the only global gathering of Muslims. Not a theological blueprint for annual Azadari in the modern streets. If the Imams wanted public processions for Ashura, they would have explicitly commanded it for Ashura, but they never did. The second argument revolves around Bibi Fatima alayhi salam. The rationalist establishment tries to frame Bibi Fatima's mourning as a public protest, citing that when the people of Medina complained about her weeping, she moved to the Bayt al-Ahzan, the house of sorrows. But look at the architectural and geographical reality of Bayt al-Ahzan. Imam Ali did not set up a pulpit for her in the center of the marketplace. He did not organize a public procession. He built her an even more secluded, private structure, completely outside the city limits, deep within the graveyard of al-Baqi. Bayt al-Ahzan was the ultimate retreat away from the public gaze. It was a domestic sanctuary designed to physically isolate her grief from the hostile masses of the city. By pointing to Bibi Fatima, the rationalist establishment is actually proving our premise that when the public environment is hostile or unreceptive, the absolute sunnah is to remove the mourning from the public sphere and retreat it into complete seclusion. Place the infallible texts next to the modern cultural practices, and the contrast is devastating. The classical blueprint is clear. The Imam commands us to go where no one can see us. He commands us to mourn inside our houses and make our grief manifest only to our family members behind closed doors. And the Imam utilized shields, acoustic and visual shields to ensure absolute privacy from the hostile world. And we are guaranteed astronomical rewards without ever needing to step out into the public gaze. The modern rationalist establishment has abandoned every single one of these protective measures by adopting the loud public rallies of modern political culture. They have not elevated Azadari, they have stripped it of its protective sanctuary. They have subjected it to the performativity of the crowd and openly violated the infallible mandate of absolute seclusion. So look at the text, read the Hadith, think independently, and return the mourning of Imam Hussain to the safety and the purity of the home. Ma'as salam.